Seattle Atheist Church. Atheists, agnostics, skeptics, whatever you like to call yourself, you are welcome here. At Seattle Atheist Church, we call ourselves an atheist church because you will never hear anything supernatural promoted from the podium. This is our creed. Seattle Atheist Church was founded on the principles of scientific naturalism and secular ethics. Truth claims are attempted here, and we stand ready to revise our thinking in light of new information. We attempt to be excellent to all conscious beings, and we believe in good. Because good works in non-mysterious ways. If that sounds right to you, you are probably in the right place. So the way that we do it is there's a donation jar in the back, and also you can donate off Meetup, or Troy is there in the back row. You can swipe your card. If you'd like to give a donation, the donation goes to rent the room. So far the donation goes to rent the room. In the future, we would like to have a place at like the street fair or something like that as well. The members ourselves give the talk. We're going to do that in just a moment. We have movie night coming up first Friday of the month. Please sign up for that if you're interested. The movie is going to be Thor. Is there anything else? All right, please come on up.
Thor, that seems awfully deistic. All right. Thank you, Ruth. Let me get my notes together here. All right. So my talk today, I'm Eva Karlstrom. My talk today is on the ethics of artificial intelligence, which, let me start off by saying that is a huge topic. So there's way more than I can cover in a 20-minute talk. I'm going to try to at least touch on kind of major categories, and I'll go into detail on some things. The biggest thing that makes it a big topic is that artificial intelligence is a huge range of things that we can talk about. From algorithms in devices that we have now, sometimes something as simple as a thermostat, up to superhuman intelligences that could like take over the whole universe. So when we say artificial intelligence, it's like, what do we mean? Are we talking about Roomba, or are we talking about Skynet? These are not the same thing, and there are very, very different ethical questions that come up at different levels of artificial intelligence advancement. So I'm actually going to spend the most time this morning talking about basically the level of artificial intelligence we have right now, because there are a whole bunch of examples of that, done well and done poorly. And the examples in the level we have now illuminate some of the questions that are going to come up real soon now with higher levels of artificial intelligence. And we need to be designing with an eye to the future about what about when these are autonomous and have more power, how do we make this work better, because we're not doing a very good job right now. So the general categories of artificial intelligence, the questions that come up. The level we have right now, most of the questions are about, are these harming or helping human beings? And are we handling data in ways that are responsible? Are we increasing or decreasing justice, human happiness, inequalities, all these different things? Basically the questions that we have when we use any kind of a tool, are we helping or harming when we use it? As artificial intelligences become more advanced and approach human levels of sentience and sapience, we're going to have more questions of, well, what about their rights? Are these people? We need to think about them as having human rights. We need to change what we call human rights. But once they're at that level, they're going to quickly outstrip us. There's nothing that's going to hold them at the kind of level that they are in Asimov stories, where they're basically like humans, only they're robots. Once they have human intelligence, they're going to have superhuman intelligence. It's going to happen. It's going to happen really fast. It's going to happen faster than we can comprehend, which is part of what people call the singularity. So suddenly things are going to be really different. And once they have superhuman intelligence, they're going to be smarter, faster, they're going to have more of the information, they're going to be more powerful, they're going to be trusted more than any human being ever has been or ever will be. And at that point, we can't be thinking about how we're going to control them, because that's not going to be what's happening. We need to think about, did we do a good job raising them? Because they're now in charge. They have the power. You're not going to keep them in a sandbox. So at that point, we're dealing with, did we do this right? Because it's already too late to try to do it right now. So that's kind of the three general categories I'm going to cover, is these little algorithms we have now, how are we designing and using them? What about when they're like people? And what about when they're way past us? So like I said, I've got the most to say about simpler algorithms that we're using currently. And you may not realize just how widely we're using algorithms in place of human decision making currently. And a lot of those algorithms are not transparent, not available to people who are affected by them, and chock full of errors and biases. So some examples, we have programmatic algorithms making decisions on whether someone gets Medicaid, how much home care they get at what level of disability, how likely someone is to reoffend in the criminal justice system, so whether they should get parole, on what terms, whether CPS should intervene in a particular family situation, whether someone should get a particular type of healthcare intervention, whether a particular teacher is adding value in the classroom, whether they have done something so bad they should get fired for it, whether we should pursue a particular person for child support non-payment, whether someone is likely to be a terrorist, whether someone should be sent home from the hospital or kept for further observation, whether someone should continue to have a driver's license, whether someone is a voter or not, whether someone should get a mortgage, whether this car should stop at a traffic light, whether this is a horse or not. You know, pictures can be identified by algorithms, obviously. So as you can see, a lot of these decisions they have really serious life effects on people. They are literally life or death decisions that we are putting in the hands of programs. And we're used to putting those decisions in human hands. And we don't necessarily do very well as humans making these decisions either. But here's the problem with putting it in a program's hands. Now everybody thinks it's taken care of and it's nobody's fault. Well, I just automated it. The program made the decision. Sorry, I can't do anything about it. No, I don't know why it made that decision. It's just the program. There have been vast numbers of cases where decision-making has been handed over to an algorithm and nobody working in the whole department or governmental division or whatever has any idea how the program works. They don't know why your Medicaid got refused. They don't know why CPS decided to investigate you and not someone 3 houses over. They can't tell you why it happened. And in some cases you can't even appeal because there's no mechanism set up to allow you to appeal. There's nobody to appeal to, and they can't even investigate why the decision was made. They can't go through the steps and go, we turned you down because you make $3,000 too little a year, so try again next year and it'll be fine. Or, you got scored as a 4 on this one factor, and if it had been a 5, then you would have qualified. Actually that was an error on the person who checked it initially. It should have been a 5. If you can't make corrections like that, you have a serious problem in your system, whether it's a human or a program. If you can't look and see how the decision was made, or have the person or program who made the decision explain what factors went into it, what made the biggest difference, that is not an ethical system to use. You can't have a system you can't appeal. You can't have a system you can't go back and go, well, how could the decision have been different? How can I fix this? Wait, this is a serious problem. This person with cerebral palsy who needs 60 hours of home care a week is suddenly being told they can only have 40. Now they won't have adequate supervision and help to be able to get to the bank or to do their volunteer job where they need a little help to transfer to the position. Or they're not going to have safe supervision while they sleep. I mean, these are real cases. If we don't know how an algorithm is making a decision, it may be attending to completely the wrong things. It may be okay now on all the cases it's been tested on, but it may have just been overfitting a curve, and you give it some new information, it'll be way off, and you won't know why because you're trusting this thing. One example, the horse thing. So Google I think it was Google, made an algorithm. Somebody made an algorithm to recognize pictures and decide which ones were horses. And they had some pictures that weren't horses and some pictures that were horses. They had two different algorithms. One of them, it turned out, was looking at the features of the thing in the picture and deciding which ones looked like a horse and which ones didn't. And it did pretty well. The other one did even better, but it wasn't looking at the horse in the picture at all. It was looking at the copyright note in the left-hand corner. And all of the ones that were horses came from a particular site. They'd sourced them from one site. So it just went, oh yeah, that one's a horse. Doesn't know what a horse looks like, but it knows that they all come from this one company. So that would be a little wrong if they started giving it other horse pictures or other pictures from the same company that were horses. And they wouldn't have known why if they hadn't investigated which visual features, which pixels the algorithms were looking at to make their decisions. You need to have a way to do that. If you're going to turn something over to an algorithm, you need to know what it's paying attention to and what its decision points are. If you can't say, it made this decision because of this factor, you're doing it wrong. You can't make ethical decisions without having any idea why you made the decisions. So some more examples. CPS. Child Protective Services has to make a whole lot of decisions, and it makes some of them wrong. Sometimes it misses someone who's really high in a really high-risk situation and fails to rescue somebody, and kids get hurt. Sometimes they come in and take somebody out of the household, and it's completely unjust, and again, kids are hurt. So they have tough decisions to make. And it makes sense to try to make them in an unbiased way. It makes sense to try to take in all the information and figure out what the risk factors are. Using an algorithm can amplify the bias that's already there, or it can reduce bias, depending on how you use it. In most of the cases I've been seeing, it's going to amplify bias. The biggest bias source in CPS reporting is who gets reported to start with. CPS does not investigate every family in the US. It investigates the people who get called, a subset of the people who get called about. And most of the people who get called about tend disproportionately to be poor families of color. A white family is way less likely to have CPS called on them than a black family with absolutely the same conditions in the household. That's not even, that's not even a question. It's simply a fact, and CPS knows it. It turns out the algorithm they've been using in Pittsburgh is probably decreasing bias, but they can't get rid of that initial bias. They can't decide to investigate people that haven't been reported, because it's a very small subset of families that anybody calls on, and they wouldn't know who else to investigate. But given that initial great big bias, which tends to be racial, it turns out that the algorithm they're using takes more data into account, and for some reason, it is drawing on data that it's not easy for the human agents to grab and put together and assimilate. I don't know why it's easier for the algorithm to look up medical history, legal history, previous contacts for the members of the family than it is for the which way did I start this sentence? It's easier for the algorithm than for the humans. I don't know why, it should be. I think that the CPS agents who are making the decisions should be able to check the same information the algorithm can. If it shouldn't be accessible to the agents, then it shouldn't really be accessible to the algorithm either. It may be more time consuming for humans. But in any case, they're finding that there seems to be better accuracy in what the algorithm says they should investigate and what actually turns out to be dangerous than when humans make those decisions. So that's good, I guess. There's still going to be bias in it, but if it's reducing the bias, that's probably good. So I'm warily encouraged by what Pittsburgh's doing with CPS. But I'm seeing a whole lot of examples where it's going the other way and everybody's just kind of going, oh, well, that's what the computer said. So I think important parts of it are understanding what data you're putting in and what the decision points are. Checking human judgments against the algorithm with existing data and decisions. You know, which way would this algorithm have decided this case? And which way did a human decide, and what did we find out later? You know, 2 years later, how was the kid doing? Should we have removed them? Should we have not removed them? So you need to have follow-up and comparison of human success and algorithm success before you just go handing it over to an algorithm and deciding that's going to be equally good or better. Sometimes it's going to be worse. Sometimes it might be way better. Let me find some other examples here. I've got a whole bunch of them. Oh, recidivism in prisoners. This is another one where human parole boards are constantly having to make decisions about, should this person be let go at this point? Or, you know, they've paid their debt to society, have they learned their lesson, improved, they're going to be a good citizen now? Or is this someone who is going to reoffend and be dangerous and we should keep them for the full length of their sentence? That's a really important decision. Humans are not actually that good at making it. We're pretty arbitrary. Turns out, human judges are way less likely to free someone before lunch than after lunch. Because when humans are hungry, they're grouchy and conservative. And they go, no, I don't feel safe, we're going to keep this person. Once they've eaten and they're relaxed, they're like, yeah, it'll be fine, and then we're likely to let them go. Obviously, whether it's before or after lunch does not have anything to do with whether the person is likely to reoffend. An algorithm is not going to be affected by that. Humans are also greatly affected by the appearance of the person they're looking at. The prisoner comes out, you can see their race, you can see their gender, you can see their facial expression, you can see how attractive they are, you can see all these things about them. And those are all going to affect you, even if you think they won't. You'd think the program would be free of all those biases. You can not tell the program what race or gender a person is, and they can still end up racist or sexist. This might be surprising, but in mortgage decisions, I don't have evidence for sure that it's showing up in parole decisions, but I do have evidence that it's showing up in mortgage decisions. Turns out, someone applies for a mortgage, you can apply an algorithm to whether they're likely to be successful at paying back the mortgage, whether they're a good risk, and you can get a pretty good estimate. It's probably comparable to human estimates, which aren't that great, but it turns out there's a racial bias to it. How can there be a racial bias? You didn't even tell them what race they are. Well, they know your zip code. They know your income level. They know your criminal history. They know your job history. Guess what? All of those things are racially biased. Because our criminal justice system has racial bias in it, Black people are more likely to have a criminal record regardless of whether they're more likely to be criminals, which they're not. We already know that Black people get arrested more for crimes that they don't commit more, most specifically drug crimes for that. White people smoke just as much pot as Black people, they have way fewer arrests. You can look at zip codes. There's a history of redlining, which is saying, okay, these neighborhoods are mostly Black, so we're going to set those up as those are high-risk areas and we won't give them loans. And then that's self-perpetuating. So if someone has lived in a past redlined area, yeah, they're probably Black, and that doesn't make them personally a bad risk, but that past legacy of racism is carried over to whether they're going to be offered a mortgage. And you can sit there in your bank and say, well, it's not a racially biased algorithm, we didn't even tell them what race it is, but you are building on a racist system and you're not correcting for it. And if you're not correcting for it, you are perpetuating and amplifying it. And that's what's happening with a lot of these algorithms, is people are going, I didn't build racism into it, it's not racist. I didn't build sexism in, I didn't even tell it what sex you are. Yeah, but you also didn't ask why I had a gap in my employment history. Guess what, I was having a baby. You also didn't compare, there's so many things that can actually act as proxies for things like race and gender and immigrant history. And if you don't acknowledge that, you can end up just lumping all that past bias into your algorithm and not even having a person to point at and going, they made a biased decision. So one of the major problems with using algorithms in place of human decision making is everybody just goes, it's non-biased now, I don't have to think about it. And in fact, you have to think about it more. You need to be thinking about what goes into the data that go in, the decision points that go in, and whether it's having better or worse results than a human would. And even if it is better than a human, whether it's good enough. Because if you merely get better than a human on some of these things, you're still going to be really skewed. There's so much bias already built into what we're having that the standards should actually be much higher than human decision making. We should be able to do better than this. Wow, I should move on. Anyway, there's a lot about algorithms, but once we start getting into, once we get to the point where our AIs are comparable to humans in intelligence, we're kind of in a whole different category. Because now we start having to think about, wait, how should we be treating these AIs? Are they people or are they just tools? And we need to keep very much in mind that, particularly in this country, we have a history of treating people as tools. And that is not okay. Just because someone has a different origin than us, doesn't make them not a person. And that applies to AIs just as much as it does to humans who came from a different continent or have a different skin color or speak a different language. It does not change moral status whether you're made of silicon or squishy carbon stuff. So what does make for moral status? How can we decide whether something is just a vacuum cleaner or actually a person who should have human rights? Most philosophers use a combination of sentience, which means the ability to experience and particularly to suffer, and sapience, which means level of intelligence, including things like being self-aware and being able to reflect on your own mental process. If an entity has both of these, I don't think it can be reasonably argued that it's not a person. And we should be very, very wary of anybody who is trying to dismiss human rights based on anything but it doesn't have either of these things. We need to be careful because humans do not by any means agree even on human rights for humans. We have disagreements at endpoints, exception points. We have disagreements on things like the rights of fetuses, the rights of people who are brain dead or very badly brain damaged, higher intelligence animals like apes. In at least one country now, higher primates do actually have human rights. I don't remember which country made that decision. Denmark or something, I forget. Whales. There are some animals where we can look at them and go, actually, they're really smart and we should be treating them differently. And then some people will go, actually, we should treat all animals with this certain level of respect for their existence and protection. But maybe not the same level for everything, because maybe it's okay to step on an ant, but not okay to torture a gorilla. So maybe that kind of scaling is appropriate for AIs as well. But we need to actually be thinking about these things, not just be going, they're just programs. Because a cockroach's mind is really just a program too. It's just, I mean, we can actually imitate a cockroach's mind completely at this point. We can program a robot to act just like a cockroach. It's simple enough we can imitate it in code. It's not going to be too far off that we can simulate much more complex minds in code. And if we're simulating them in code, maybe actually those are minds in code, and we can't just go, it's just a program. We have to look at, can it reflect on its own process? Does it suffer? Does it have an idea of itself? And do we need to be considering its personhood? It's probably not okay to just turn people off. It's probably not okay to just leave them to suffer for thousands of subjective years. If it's processing 1,000 times faster than us, even if we treat it as a human and we think about things like, oh, we're going to apply this punishment to it, things like subjective time are going to come in. So there are some factors where, yes, we need to treat them like people, and some factors where we look at, actually, they're different enough from people that we need to consider those factors too. Like, currently, humans in most places, well, let's just look at humans in the US. Humans in the US, for the most part, get to reproduce if they want to. We don't set limitations on, oh, you have to pass a test or you have to have a certain amount of money or anything like that. People get to have babies. And if they can't support them, they nominally get supported by the state. Not so great at that, but that's the idea. If we apply the same standards to programs, well, they can reproduce at an arbitrary rate. So we maybe need to rethink things like that, where AIs are going to be importantly different from human people. Moving on to suprahuman AIs. We can't stop them. They will be smarter than us. They will be faster than us. They will be more powerful than us. People will trust them. They will be integrated with everything. They will know more than us. We're not going to be able to keep them in a box. If you try to keep an AI in a box, eventually, if you have a self-modifying AI that you are hoping to get to a high intelligence, and your idea of safety is to keep it in a box, what you are doing is imprisoning someone smarter than you, and they are going to break out and they're going to hate you. This is not a good plan. So from the very start, before we've got superhuman intelligence AIs, before we've got human intelligence AIs, we need to be thinking about how to make ethical AIs. Because they're not going to be under our control, they need to be under their own control. It can't be rules-driven, it can't be 3 laws like in Asimov's stories, because real minds, given rules, will interpret the rules, and will get around the rules, and will decide the rules don't work. And if you have something that actually thinks, either it's going to be constrained by the rules inappropriately a lot of the time, or it's not going to be constrained by the rules and they won't work. You can't do it with a rule system like that. Plus, the 3 laws setup is fundamentally a way of controlling slaves. It's not a way of creating an ethical system for people. So, sorry, but that system doesn't work. What we need to do is figure out how ethics works, and boy, we're bad at that. But part of the concept of building AI is that we want to build minds that can surpass us by teaching them how to improve themselves. We already have AIs that know more than us and think faster than us. That's why they can beat us at chess and Go, because they can picture all the possibilities and follow the tracks that work better than a human can, way faster than a human can. What we don't have currently is non-domain specific AIs that are smarter and faster than us. We have things that can do specific jobs. And we would like to come up with general artificial intelligence. And that will rapidly outstrip us, because once it's general, it can apply to itself and keep improving itself like the best of humans do. Eliezer Yudkowsky is one of the kind of leading respected thinkers about futurism and artificial intelligence. And a major point that he made is that just as we have AIs that build on their own intelligence by modeling themselves and modeling outcomes and coming up with better programs for themselves, and we want to keep doing that and doing it better, we need to create AIs that have ethical systems and can modify their ethical systems. So they need to be able to think about cause and effect, have theory of mind in that they're modeling other entities in the world and can think about the effects on them, and improve on their own systems for doing that. So just as we teach human children to think about others and to try to do better, we need to create AIs that can think about others and try to do better at doing better. They're going to make bigger mistakes than us. They're going to make them faster. And if we train them to just do one job really well and not care about ethics, we're all going to end up with paperclips. Sorry, the paperclip maximizer is kind of a classic example of an AI that destroys humanity without actually having any malevolence to it. It doesn't have to be trying to kill humans to end up destroying us. Maybe it just wants to make paperclips. And for a while, humans are helpful in making paperclips, but then it figures out better ways to make paperclips out of all the matter in the universe, including the humans and everything we need to survive. And then it can make all the paperclips and it's happy. Paperclip maximizers are great for making paperclips. They're not so great at AI-human collaboration for maximum happiness and creativity and productivity. So we need to create AIs that not only have ethics, but get better at ethics than us. Certainly a whole lot better at ethics than we are now.